All right, all right, all right. Welcome, family. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Mosaic Entertainment Group Presents, MEG Presents, episode number 7. Number 7, full circle. And who better to come full circle with? My next guest, Mr.
Sure.
I'm going to say it again, Mr. Chris Studenka, the actor. Yes. How are you doing this evening, sir? Thank you very much.
I'm doing awesome.
You like to go by Chris, Christopher, your whole name? What do you like?
I go by Chris, but just Christopher as a stage name.
Christopher. Okay.
Chris personally.
All right. Okay. Well, yeah, that's how we kind of know each other. We have a little personal history. So, all right, Christopher Studenka, ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Studenka. Thank you very much for coming on my show, Mr. Studenka. How are you doing this evening?
You know, despite the virus hysteria, I'm doing quite well. I'm doing just fine.
Oh man, you know,
as we are taping this, we're in the middle of the virus hysteria, and I'm healthy, happy, and fine. And living life.
Same here. I'm living life. You know, I'm not worried about any of that. You know, of course, you kind of take precaution because you know,
of course,
you never know, but within reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just don't have to shut down life. That's all.
Man, and it's wow. And I spent the last few days in bed. I don't know if you know that. I've been suffering from food poisoning the last few days.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much with the last 3 or 4 hours before we're airing the show, recording the show, I'm starting to feel better. That's just to let you know. So Friday, I was shut down. Saturday, shut down. Yesterday, shut down. So, and all this is going on. My wife is running back and forth trying to take care of me, Chris, and there's nothing at the supermarket. So, you know, she had to little extra and go a little further than she wanted to. So it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. All right.
Wow.
Enough about that silliness. Christopher. All right, man. So you're an actor. I understand you're not a native of the state of Arizona. Tell the audience who you are, where you are from, my friend.
Sure. Well, I am born and raised in Lansing, Michigan. Not unlike a lot of Midwesterners who kind of came west to get out of the cold and snow, and I don't miss any of that one bit. But proud to be a Michigander. Grew up there, went to college there, worked all over the country in a non-entertainment capacity, but found my way to Arizona about 8 years ago. It's another whole story, but I got divorced. I don't have any children, and decided to move out west and just get a new life and
absolutely
sunny weather. And it was the best thing I ever did. So it's been great for me. Arizona's a beautiful state. And I love it.
So how did you get into the acting? Where did you start acting here? When did that happen? Because you said 8 years ago. So I got you by about 4 years. I've been here since 2008. So so you're around 2012, right? Around that time?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Summer in Arizona. I moved in summer of 2012, right into the heat. So trial by fire, literally. Just trying to deal with it.
That was one of the hottest years on record, Chris.
It was, it was also a good way to get used to this, to living out here too. Because then came October at 100 degrees, felt like nothing. And that's weird for a Midwesterner.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My stepping into the entertainment world is a little bit different than most. And I think what makes it interesting as a story is that because it happened in a later time in my life and wasn't part of my life growing up, but I think it's sort of something that a lot of people can maybe relate to or think and realize, hey, maybe I could do something too. So acting was not a part of my life at all. Growing up, I never did school theater or anything like that.
Wow.
But about 4 years ago, about 4.5 years ago, and this all ties in together, but I'm an avid runner, and I run marathons, and I train really hard and run them seriously, not just a weekend warrior, but I train really hard.
You're a real good one.
And so about 4.5 years ago, I had a friend who is a local model here in Arizona with Ford Agency, and said, "Hey, you're a runner, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, they're doing a modeling shoot for a Dick's Sporting Goods catalog. You should audition for that." Now she knew I wasn't a model or that I have none of that in my background,
Mhm.
and I just laughed it off. And then about a month later, when the audition came up, she told me again and said, that might just be a funny story. I just tell my buddies that I auditioned to be a model. And so I went in and auditioned with like hundreds and hundreds of other people, let alone all the professionals that were there. And lo and behold, for some reason, they chose me.
Wow.
And not only that, they take a lot of pictures for these things. You don't know if they're going to use any of them. They end up using 2 of me in the
Wow.
catalog. And it was I modeled running clothes and running shoes. And so that's where how it tied into that. And then you learn all these things now because it wasn't part of my background. The catalog was cast just like a movie. They had people audition the same way they would audition a movie. Because
Wow.
it was a regular casting company that cast the catalog. And I just did it, got paid really nicely, and just thought, well, that's a fun story of my life, and thought nothing more of it. And about 6 months later, that casting director called me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing a commercial? And I said, well, I'm not an actor. And she was like, oh, you could do a commercial. You just say one line or something. And I was like, sure. I mean, I'll audition.
Mhm.
And so I went in and auditioned for that commercial, and then they kept calling me back in to do commercials, and I was getting a few, and even when I wasn't, I was getting called back, and I was one of the finalists. And again, I have no background in it. And then that same company was casting a feature film that was filmed here in Arizona, and they asked me if I'd like to be in it, and I was like, well,
Whoa.
yeah, let me know where to audition. They said, no, you want to be in it? And I was like, sure. So I had a very, very small part in a feature film, and then, but then I thought, I started to meet some other actors at these things, and thought, even if I didn't get a commercial or something where they kept calling me in, I was getting a call back. So I thought, well, maybe I have some sort of untapped talent that I've never pursued.
Mhm.
I led a whole different life as a married man, and just would have never done anything like that because I had a happy life the other way. And but I thought, well, maybe there's a whole new life for me out here too. Maybe I should audition to do. I didn't think much else because I was working my regular job, and so I started auditioning for all sorts of things, and things that I probably had no business auditioning for. Because I had no background, no experience, and I was auditioning for lead roles for no good reason, just because I thought, well, if I want to be in it, well, I don't want to just be standing in the background. I
That's
mean,
right. Just go for it.
so
Go for the gusto.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really did. And so I started booking all sorts of work, and I was going to LA a lot, and I booked jobs in LA, and people are like, well, how are you doing that without, and I say I have no agent at that point. So like, how are you getting all these gigs? Like, I just auditioned, and it took me a couple of years to really believe that I have some type of acting ability, because I wasn't trained and I wasn't.
So so so
So
so so hold up. Let's back up for a second.
yeah,
So up until this point, so you're talking about a good 3-4 year period, you had no training while you're booking these jobs. You have absolutely no training whatsoever. So no acting
correct.
classes or no anything. You're just reading the script and or the sides, or
Yes,
you're saying, okay, I'm just gonna inhabit what I see and just do it.
yes. It was all very from feel and natural. Now, when they first started me calling in for commercials,
Mhm.
and if you really pay attention to most commercials, there's not a lot of acting involved. It's maybe one line, 2 lines. Sometimes there's no lines.
Sure.
So I never really thought of that as acting. It's just like, oh, I'll get paid to eat a pizza. Great. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
more based on looks or a certain look.
Or a certain look, right? What they're looking
Yeah.
for. Right.
But when I started auditioning for movies, and I embarrassed myself a number of times because I didn't even know the audition process. I would go in and they would say slate, and I didn't know what that meant, and I was like, what? And they're like, well, who's your agent? And I said, well, what do you mean? I don't have one. And so I embarrassed myself, but that happened to me a couple times, and I realized, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to at least learn what I'm doing. So I read a tremendous amount and studied a tremendous amount on my own about
Right.
the business side of it, and about acting, and about what it means to act, and I read the Stravinsky Method book, and I didn't go in a formal teaching program, but I really prepared, and if I was auditioning for something and they sent me sides or scene, I mean, I really put a lot into that on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But I was prepared. There was never a doubt after the first few that anything, and this still to this day, if I audition for anything, I'm prepared 100%,
Mm-hmm.
maybe more so than anybody else. That's what I pride myself on. And I know I can go in there and I'll be really prepared, and I've thought through the character in my own mind of what I think they would do or what they might do, because you're not always given a lot to audition of. You're given like one or two descriptors maybe of what that
That's on
character is.
purpose. That's on purpose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I come up with a lot of stuff on my own, and that shows that I'm thinking it through.
Absolutely.
And so, but I really prepared. There's no shortage for preparation for any of that. And I also think that a lot of it, even from the beginning, even though I wasn't trained formally as an actor,
Mm-hmm.
my entire professional career had been spent uh, presenting in front of large crowds and presenting with people, which is in a lot of ways acting. It's not the same way, but you're in front of a large crowd and you have these scripts, but business idea, whatever it is, memorized so that you can convince people, because that's what business is. How do I convince you to be on our team or do what we want to do? So I spent, years doing that. That's not acting per se, but it's the same thing in a lot of
I was
ways.
about to say, you can absolutely, how we say in the professional world, cross-reference those experiences,
Yes,
those skills,
yes,
because you were performing. You
correct.
were, so you had time to, and it shows. And it
Yeah,
shows because, for my audience out there, I can concur with everything Mr. Studenka is saying because he does come prepared. He asks a lot of questions. He is inquisitive about his character, and he wants to know what you want as the director. And if he's not giving it to you, please, give him the direction to do so. And that is what appealed to me, and that's why I cast you, in my show. He's also a cast member on my show, Learning to Run, coming soon. We're in the editing stages, sir, so we're almost there. Um, Yep, I cast you in the show, and actually, for the audience out there, it's not live; it is recorded, but it will be airing soon. You will have a reoccurring role in this, sir. That just wasn't one episode, so just be aware of
yeah,
that. But yeah, man, so I can concur with that, and to the audience that he is prepared, he does do his homework, and that is something that you know you've had 20 years. I'm assuming 20 plus years because the way you
yes,
described it. Um, Already prepared. So acting was just another avenue for what you were already prepared for. Mine
yeah,
was on the stage since I was 11, 12 years old. That was mine. And
yeah.
I learned how to break out of my shell. And that was a form of public speaking for me. But I
Mhm.
learned to perform in a classical sense. You were doing it in the business world. You know what I mean?
Right.
It truly is no difference.
Yeah, I think that, a couple of big things with that is that anytime I went on an audition, I wasn't nervous for two reasons. It wasn't my regular job, so if I didn't get it, I
Yeah.
was still gonna live,
Gonna be
I
all right.
wasn't a
Yeah.
starving actor, which is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then I had the confidence because I was prepared, but also because I'd spent so many years in front of people, I wasn't nervous to be in front of people, and because I knew I was prepared. And there's plenty of jobs that you don't get. That's part of auditioning and acting. But I honestly believe that there's never a time that anybody thought, well, he couldn't do it. I
Mhm.
just wasn't right for the role. They knew that I was there and showed that I was prepared and could do it. And sometimes you're just not the right person for the role.
Right. It just depends.
That's not easy to take sometimes, but I really don't think anybody I've ever auditioned for thought, well, there's no way he could handle it, because I think I can at least show that I came prepared. I asked questions because I care.
Mhm.
And, really, like I said, I auditioned for stuff. I would tell this to anybody else that wants to start, whether it's later in life or young in life.
Mhm.
Audition for everything that you can, even if you can't. That was my training. I auditioned for stuff I had no business auditioning for, but I thought, you know what? I'll get experience auditioning. That's how I thought in my mind.
Right.
There's experience for me. And I'll learn to meet what they're really looking for. What do they want? And it's always different, but there's a lot of overlap between all those things. And I went out to LA, and I'll never forget, I had the chance to audition for a role to play a drug addicted father. Now, thankfully in my life, I know nothing about drugs. I've never had that as part of my life at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really auditioning for things that maybe I don't want to say I shouldn't have, but like really stretching myself. It's like, well, how far can I take this? What can I display? How can I exude that? Because all of it was sort of new and it was surprising. And it was a very emotional role. The stories of me and my daughter. And I'm a terrible father because I keep falling on and off the wagon of drugs. I went on an audition there, a really emotional scene, and it's the first time they really felt that I could act, because I did that audition. That was one of the few times I was nervous because it was so emotional. I was like, gosh, am I really going to be able to bring that emotion in a snap? That's what the training does for you, and I didn't have it. But in that moment, I did. And it was one of the times when I left that audition, I thought, wow, whether I get it or not, of course, you always want to get it.
Right.
I know that I nailed it. And I was fortunate enough to get that. We filmed it at Universal. It was, and that was just a wonderful experience all the way around. And I was still pretty new at that time.
Wow.
And it just gave me a lot of experience, a lot of belief in myself too, that, well, you got something, whatever it is. I'll never say that I'm a great actor, but I have something.
Well, never say.
I have the chance to pursue it at this time in my life, which maybe I wouldn't have 10 years before, even if it had come to me. And so why not pursue it? And that's really what I've done. I've sort of seen how far it can take me. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And that's what I always tell people too. If you don't enjoy it, if you don't enjoy going to the auditions and that part of the process, then don't do it.
Say that again. Say that again, Chris.
Because you're going to get 1,000 no's.
Yes.
I don't care how good you are. You're going to get 1,000 no's before you get a yes. And you're going to get a yes on stuff that turns out terrible and is terrible, because that's part of being an actor too. You don't want it to be terrible, but there's so many, as a director, there's so many elements, from the right score, the right editing.
Oh yeah, man. I mean,
the lighting, the sound quality. If all of those things aren't good, it doesn't matter how good an actor is. So
yep, it's so
many elements.
There's so many elements to it, and then then there's film and commercials, which I've done, and then there's the stage, which I've done. So, do you have any experience on the stage? Have you actually done a lot of stage plays?
No, but here's another thing. Again, I was like, I did these. That's
surprising. The way you carry yourself.
Commercials.
Yeah.
I did commercials, then I did films and short films. I did a music video. And I thought, I wonder if I could do a play. Well, really what it started is I like to act, but anybody that's done any acting, even in a film, you act for about 2 minutes and then they stop and then they change the lights. And there's a lot of gaps in time, and you might rehearse one day and that's it. But with a play, you get to act every day because you're rehearsing for a month or two before the performance. Then you get to give the performance for a week or two. And one of the negatives of acting is you have this great character and you might just get to do it once and that's it. You're like, oh, I'd love to play that guy again, but or do it again. And with a play, I thought, well, if I was ever in a play, I could do it. I could act all the time. But the challenge that presented to me is the time commitment that it takes to be in a play. And I've never been able to commit that much time to it, but I did have the chance to do, I auditioned for plays knowing there was no way I could take them. And I've been offered roles in plays and I had to turn it down because it just didn't, I was hopeful that maybe it could work and it didn't work. However, I did a play last summer that was going to be a one-time performance, and we rehearsed for a week and I committed to that. And it was a fun experience. It's much different because if you're acting in front of a camera, you get in close-ups. There's a lot more nuance and subtlety to it. And if you're acting on a stage, you need the person in row 52 to be able to hear your voice.
Absolutely.
You'll see more emotion with your hands or whatever it is. It's a much different vehicle. But I just thought I wanted to try every vehicle. And see where I fell in, and I think I found my nuance is film, but it wouldn't stop me from doing a play again if I could make the timing work. That's what it's about. Because to do a play justice, you got to do a lot of rehearsals.
Yeah, I mean that's scheduling, and it depends. I've done drama and musicals, and musicals of course take a whole lot longer.
Yeah,
Costumes and lighting, and you're running the play, and you're running the play in and out of costume, and then so it's yeah. In my experience, it's about a 3 to 4 month process before
right.
we hit the stage to do the performance. For me, the stage was freedom. You know,
Mm,
it was an opportunity to truly, be me, in whatever form that was, and this is as a child, and then hitting, then you kind of graduate to the television and the film and things like that, and you kind of bring those subtleties to it, that skill set to it. But I like film too. I feel you on that, man. It's just a different art form.
it's just different. Yes.
It's a different art form. And yeah, you got your cuts and your takes and your redos and your reshoots and things like that. But the part to me about that, which is so priceless, Chris, is that you have to manage and maintain that character throughout that process. There is no taking off your character, because that lighting change is an hour. You're still that person if you're as tapped in as you should be. So
Right.
there is a similarity there.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just differences, like you said. They're just different mediums. They're
Mhm.
both acting, and the challenges are both ways too. Because if you're doing a dramatic film role and you film one scene and then you stop for 3 hours, you got to get yourself back into that mode. When you pick back up, and it's got to be close so that it looks even on screen. And that's depending on the roles, that's a challenge that way. And it
Yeah,
would be a challenge to be in that character for hours and weeks on end too. So it's just different. I'd love to explore it more and I think if the right opportunity came along from a
absolutely.
schedule perspective, I would love to do a play. I really would.
May have something for you in the future. May have something for you in the future. But I know Denzel.
Awesome.
Just to give you a tidbit on that, Denzel, and I know I'm saying Denzel Washington. Oh my God! But he started out. Nobody knew who he was. At a certain time. So his method was to once he got into film, I've read, um, was that he stayed in character. There was like from the moment he received the script and he decided to do it, he evolved into that particular character. And a feature length film is about a good 3 month filming process. So
Right.
you're filming for at least 90 days, and then it depends. Some it could be 120 days. It all depends. So to maintain and to hold that person for such an extended amount of time.
Yeah.
And then you do have days off. You have the weekends off. You got, it's not like you. And
Yes.
what I read is the
Yeah.
man, when he's doing a film, he doesn't take that time off. Like he's that character the whole time. So it's like his family has to deal with that and whatnot. So I can understand, being on both sides of the camera where you have to hold that. You know what I'm saying? And it does take a certain amount of strength and a willpower to get yourself back there. You know what I mean? Because you'll be on a set, and if you have a trailer, you're in there asleep if you're not on set.
Yeah.
So how do you maintain that? So yeah, there's a challenge there for sure.
I think that's where the skill set comes in, really, is
Absolutely.
that I don't want to say anybody. It's kind of like anybody can make a 3-pointer if you got an empty basketball court, give people enough tries.
Mhm.
Anybody probably could act in one scene, but can you keep with it when you got to pick it back up 3 hours later or the next day, or do it for 30 days in a row? That's where the skill comes in. It's
Mhm.
not a one-time thing. It's being able to do that consistently,
Absolutely.
and then hopefully at a high level so that people are entertained by it. That's the other challenge. Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, I can do it. Is anybody going to be entertained by it?
I'm
That's
gonna care, right?
the ultimate goal.
Right, right. So, do you have any favorite films? Any favorite actors you like to look at?
I've it definitely. I think it's an interesting thing. I grew up mostly as a teenager in the '80s,
Mhm.
and that was a heavy time for sitcoms.
Yep.
Uh,
We're doing
so
the
I
same
watched a
time.
lot of sitcoms, and I wasn't aspiring to be an actor, but boy, I think if you're anyone that's close to our age, Jermaine, I don't know about kids so much nowadays. We can give every line of every show that we watched or like embedded in our brain. So even though I wasn't acting as a kid, like I know all of that. I can pick up 2 minutes of an episode and I can give every line the rest of the way. It just gets in your brain.
Don't get me started, Chris. I know so many theme songs from the '80s.
Right.
I have the audience in tears, man.
Yeah.
Don't get me
But more modern days, I think some of the main players. Uh, Interestingly enough, Matthew McConaughey is one actor that I really uh, enjoy his work because I didn't early on. He did a lot of like romantic comedies and sort of silly films that just weren't my style.
started.
Then he took a break for 2 years and started doing all sorts of independent films because he wanted to change that narrative to his life
Mm-hmm.
as an actor and started doing all sorts of more grittier films and I've seen most of them and I liked how he could play a lot of different ways. And that's what I like to do as an actor, that I'm not just playing one type of character that I can, because I've played everything. I've played a detective, I've played an abusive father, a drug addict, a football coach. I've played about every type of character rather than just playing dad every time. I haven't been pigeonholed, thankfully. But I've also, again, that's part of like auditioning for roles that maybe I shouldn't have. But it was also like that role that I got to play at Universal for that movie Loop. It was called Loop, where I played the abusive father. I had no connection to drugs or know anything about it, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was lucky enough to get the role and play the part and expand who I was.
Did
Because
you
I'd
get
done commercials and been like the same guy in a commercial every time, just sort of
me?
like the dad. And like
So
it was a chance for me to do different stuff.
for that one role in Loop,
Yeah.
did you do any research like into drug
Yes.
addiction and things like that? Okay.
Yes, and worked with a great director, young African American director, Cecil Green. He's still in LA, and that was like a short teaser, and I don't even know how we got Universal, but he did,
Hmm.
and that he was able to make it there so that to try and sell it into the feature. And that never came to fruition, but it was still an incredible experience for me. But yes, so how do I play a drug addict? Well, I watched a lot of TV shows. There's a TV show called Intervention that deals with drug addicts and sort of shows spiraling out of control. I watched a lot of those episodes to just see the linear nature of what's the same between all those people. Why do they pick up and why do they get started? And then as we got to filming that, I decided for myself, like I'm a blessed individual with my life and my family, and I know that. So it's like, how do I feel? How do I get into that character? So I didn't shower for a few days. I didn't eat for a few days, so that I just felt really uncomfortable in my own skin, and that would manifest itself on the screen, even though I wasn't doing anything necessarily. But I know my body felt weird, so I knew I was moving differently than I normally did. I was uncomfortable, and I thought that would help. And but again, it was preparation. There's a lot of dramatic dialogue in that and emotional scenes with my daughter, and I had to really be prepared as much as anything else. And because yeah, you could get all the drug part down, but can you have the dramatic scene within that with the dialogue to make it work? It was
That's very impressive. That's very impressive, man. I'm thinking about what you're saying, Chris, and that's very impressive for someone who's never even considered a career in acting. You know what I mean? You've done what I'm gonna tell you right now, what a lot of actors who working in Hollywood wouldn't do. You know what I mean? You actually decided that, okay, I'm don't know what I'm doing, but this feels like the right thing to do, and to put yourself in that situation, and you spend that time just wrestling with the character and figuring out, that's the best way to do it, man. That's where you're not just taking what's on the page. So I'm sure Cecil saw what I saw. It's not what you just take it off the page, you take the words off the page, you understand that's just the spine. You know this. So
Right.
you look at it because you've analyzed documents. You've probably written, very, these business, documents where you had to do these presentations and stand in front of people. I understand that where you're doing presentations and you have to you have to remember this information. You have certain key points you want to hit and things like that. So
Exactly.
you've done that in an acting sense, man, where you actually. And I had to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but I was just impressed by what I was hearing because I'm like, man, how many people actually do that? Like they just try to fake their way through it, but
Yeah.
you didn't. That is what acting is, man. You didn't. You're not acting. What did I always say on the set? Don't act, be. That's it.
Yes.
You become. You don't act. People see that. You just be,
Correct.
and that's it.
You don't want people to think you're acting. That's how I've always viewed it. And
Exactly.
how can you make it be as natural, even in an unnatural setting? And what I really, again, a lot of this is self-taught, but I was like, well, how can I relate to this guy? And I thought, let's boil it all the way down to the basics. He's a man. I'm a man. I'm not a father, but I'm of that age. I could be a father. I'm a godfather. So
Almost close enough.
and start there and start adding those layers in to how did he get to that point? I've had failure in my life. So he fell off the rails. And I know what that feels like to a degree. He went a different way, but there's parallels that are within all of us. Because as I started to act, I realized, oh, I can draw on this from my life. But that would have never occurred to me when that happened, that it would be something to use later on in a positive way. But we've all had ups and downs in our lives or things that have happened that we can pick from and use. And how did somebody react to that? And I think I've also been, just in general in life, I've always been very observant of people and my surroundings. And maybe that was because I was a small, tiny white kid in an inner city high school and had to be. But
no choice. I grew up with one of you. I grew up with you. And he was my best friend. He was my best friend in middle school.
Yeah. But I just think I'm always really observant of people. And so I've taken that in my whole life and understanding situations and realizing I have a good analytical brain, which
I can tell.
I think a lot of people in acting would say, well, I'm not analytical. You're probably more analytical than you think. Even the most ardent artists, they don't want to think of themselves that way, but
true. You're an analyst. You absolutely are. You can't be you cannot be an artist without being an analyst. Sorry. It doesn't work that
way. I think you're right. I just think some artists wouldn't want to consider themselves that way, but I think it only can help because to me, that's how I approach every character. It's all right, what is his real, what's that character's goal and whatever I'm doing? Why is he there? And then what can I bring to it? But how do I bring that to it is by analyzing who I think he is. What did the director say to me? I always ask the director, I'll do exactly what they want, but I always bring something of my own too that I'll add in. They might not like it, but I bring it because that's me thinking it through it. Sometimes you change their mind, not because that's my goal, but it's like, I'll do exactly what you want. But here's what I think too, and here's why. Not just, oh, I want to scream and yell. Well, okay, I think he would scream because I'm bringing, I think it through. Why would he act that way? Not just because you want an emotional scene. That's for the wrong reason. That's going to be acting when you do it that way too. Everyone's going to, oh, he's acting angry.
Absolutely. And the audience can see it, man. And that's what impressed me about you because I'm recalling the first day on the set, and I remember when we were shooting in that office, and I'm telling you guys out there, the man is not lying. That's how he comes, and he even changed my mind on a few things, and he was able to kind of manipulate his character just enough in a certain way to where he didn't take it out of character. He added just enough dash of what a real person would say or do in a situation like that, even if he's trying to be a little provocative, and that's okay because you see your actor thinking. You see he's not just there just to take up space and say, "Hey, I'm going to be in a TV show. That's awesome."
Right.
He's not a time waster. He's not a time waster. And speaking of time, we're getting short on time, Chris. So please tell the audience what you're doing now and where
Sure.
they can find you.
Well, yes, and thank you for that. And I would say, I know we're short on time, but I want to say what really made a big difference in working on your show is that A, you were open to my suggestions, but then B, working with a high level talent like Alan Johnson. And Alan and I have great scenes because that's the first time I've worked with him. But we had a good chemistry together, and that makes a huge difference, of course, if you have another strong actor to play off of.
He
And
really
we
likes
did.
really likes
And
you.
I knew he could handle, without giving away, I said some strong stuff. I knew he could handle it.
Mm-hmm.
If
Absolutely.
I stepped in that day and saw a different actor, I might not have thought it would work because he might not have been able to. He's excellent
Not.
and a great guy. And I wrote in a short film that got made, and Alan came back from LA just to be in a very small piece. So I appreciate watching because he's a great guy. But I just finished a 30-minute featurette that is called Red Velvet Evening, that it's going to be playing in festivals all over the country. Turned out fantastic. It's a great sort of a thriller. It's a two-person drama. It turned out really well. So that's playing everywhere. I'm working on a feature film at the moment that's kind of like for an 80s reference, kind of like a Miami Vice episode on steroid. So it's kind of fun. I'm playing a really bad guy in that, and that was fun. And just finished a bunch of short films, and just been a pleasure to do a bunch of stuff. I've been very fortunate to
So
have a lot of stuff.
you're awesome, man. You do have an IMDb page, right? You do have an
I have an
IMDb.
IMDb. It's under Christopher Studenka. That's my stage name.
Check it out,
And
y'all. Check it out.
I'm not a big social media guy. I'm on Facebook, but I really am not a big Instagrammer. And that's the other thing I say. A lot of people say, "Oh, you need to post this and that." I don't, and it works for me. But if it works for you, then great. But I don't think you need to do those things where you're posting 10 times a day on Twitter and Instagram. You can, but I mean, I don't, and it works. So I'm just saying it's another way. You don't have to promote everything you do. And
Absolutely.
there's lots of things that is, if you want to be a real actor, you're going to do stuff. And I don't want to say you're not proud of it. I'm not ashamed of anything I've done, but there's certainly things that aren't great, and you do them for the money, and you do them to act and do a different thing, and that's part of it too. If you want to be an actor, it's not all rose petals. That's for
No,
sure.
it's not. No, it's not. You got it, and you have to have tough skin. All right,
Yes.
Christopher, Mr. Christopher Studenka, thank you very much for appearing on my 7th episode, that full circle episode of Mosaic Entertainment Group Presents. You said some encouraging things earlier in the show. Please, once again, encourage those out there who were in your position at one time. And what piece of advice would you give them as we close out?
Well, first off, thank you, Jermaine, for letting me be on your show. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to work with you, and I enjoyed this. And I really looking forward to seeing the finished product of Learning We're On. Best piece of advice I would give anybody is that if you want to be in this business, it's a grind, and you got to hustle, and you have to make yourself do everything for yourself. If you have an agent, they might give you a few leads, but it's really you have to have that drive and motivation for yourself, and just stretch yourself, because you might put yourself in a different direction you didn't think you could do, or that it might take you in a direction you realize, oh, that's where I'm really talented. So just stretch yourself, and then more than anything else, have fun with it. If you're not having fun with it, don't do it. So just have fun with it.
Absolutely. That's right. Stay positive. And on that note, thank you very much again for your time, Christopher Studenka, everybody. Round of applause. Thank you very much for showing up. Thank you very much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Have a great evening. Family, we will see you again on the next episode of Mosaic Entertainment Group Presents. I won't tell you now who it is, but you'll see. Have a good night. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Jermaine.
Have a
You
good
too.
night. All righty.